Hello YouTubes. I thought I'd show off some games of mine, and this first one was played in the 3rd division of the Finnish Team Chess Championships, and before the game I was rated at 1866 and my opponent was rated at 1579, and I was playing white. So let's take a look at the game. I opened with e4, which I've been playing pretty much exclusively in long games for a while now. In Blitz I sometimes open with something else, but at long games I feel like I know these e4 openings best. And my opponent played c5, which is the Sicilian defense. Very strong defense, often played at a very high level. And I continued knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and this is all pretty normal stuff. And here my opponent played g6. Now this g6 is known as the dragon variation, and it's a really aggressive defense. I continued bishop e3, bishop g7, and here I played f3, going for a Yugoslav attack. And Yugoslav attack is probably the most aggressive way to handle the dragon. Here my opponent castled. I played queen d2, knight c6, and here white can play bishop c4, but I went for castling. And here my opponent played bishop d7. Now usually in this Yugoslav attack position, white has a fairly simple plan of pushing the h-pawn forward and basically trying to get rid of it, possibly exchanging it or sacrificing it. And black has these two defenders of his king position, and usually white will play something like bishop h6 to trade off the g7 bishop, and then something like knight d5 to trade it with the f6 knight, or harass it somehow, make it retreat. And then after this has been established, white generally attempts to checkmate black on the h-file with using the queen and the rooks and maybe a knight or something. It kind of depends on what black does, but this is the basic plan here. However, if white plays the immediate h4, then black has this h5 possibility, which has been played quite often. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a great defense or anything, but I just wanted to avoid this. So this time I went for this g4 move. And here black played rook c8, and here I had some options. For example, I could proceed with my plan with h4, and note that here, of course, this bishop h6 doesn't work because of knight takes d4, and black wins material after something like bishop takes g7, knight takes f3, and then something like queen f4, king takes g7. And here, of course, if white takes the knight, then black can simply play bishop takes g4 and skewer the queen and the rook. So white is basically forced to play something like g5 here, when black can just take the pawn and be up 2 pawns. My move here was king b1, basically just getting out of the way of the rook on c8. kind of a defensive move, and my opponent played Queen A5 here, and here of course I could go for the H4 immediately, but what I decided to play Knight B3 and exchange the bishops immediately. So after Queen C7 I went Bishop H6, and when my opponent played Knight E5 I of course took the bishop, and here I played Bishop E2 just to protect this F3 pawn and connect my rooks and basically finish my development. And here my opponent played A6, but I'm not sure. A6 looks pretty logical. I mean, black can just continue B5, B4, harass the white king's position, but maybe also Bishop E6 would have been okay here. Anyways, after A6 I played this H4 with the idea of continuing push forward and trade. But here my opponent played H5, and I thought this during the game. I thought this move looked kind of suspect, allowing white to open up this king position. But maybe it is a decent move after all, because after G takes H5, if black plays G takes H5 here, then after something like Rook G1 check, King H8, H7, sorry, Knight D5, Knight takes D5, E takes D5, Rook G8, Knight D4. White does have a slight advantage, but I'm not sure if there's any way to push through and win this. Maybe there is, but there's lots of play left. So my opponent, however, did not play this G takes H5 and instead played Knight takes H5. Now this is a mistake, because now white is able to move his knight to D5, whereas if black had a knight on F6, black could trade, like in the previous variation. However, I didn't see this Knight D5 resource during the game, because it seems that black has some annoying pressure on the C file, and I was kind of reluctant to move my knight because of it, because the knight is obviously blocking the pressure on the C2 pawn. But if I had just taken a look at this Knight D5, it would have immediately become apparent that after Knight D5 the queen doesn't actually have any decent squares on the C file, and this E7 pawn is threatened as well. So in fact Queen D8 seems like the only move here. So if I had taken a look at this variation, I probably would have played it. Here of course white continues F4, and now this is an interesting position, because the black knight has 3 squares which all look kind of okay, but in fact none of them are any good.